because I'm just sitting here asking the questions and kind of letting the guests talk. And that's my thing. Like, I like to let the guests talk. I think that most people enjoy that and I enjoy that. But for an episode like this with a recap, it's nice to be able to speak freely and to talk a little bit about my thoughts on some of this stuff. I didn't think we'd have like Graham Hancock, Jimmy Corsetti, Randall Carlson, like those like big names like on the first year. That was a big surprise. For me, the evidence for geopolymer is just, and people are gonna get pissed off with this, it's just very minimal. It's very minimal. Out of 100% full understanding of what Bob was talking about at dinner, what was your percent?
-10.
That I think that a lot of what we see out there is either reverse engineered from crashes that have happened, extraterrestrial crashes that have happened, or interdimensional crashes that have happened. Now, some of the shit that he says, I mean, some of the shit that he talks about, dude, I mean, it's wild.
To clarify, we had 0 subscribers.
Yeah.
We didn't even have a channel yet. We recorded with Ben, and then the official creation on YouTube and Spotify and all the other platforms came after we recorded the episode.
Right.
So our number one thing was, hey, you know what? Let's shoot for the stars and get one of the biggest names in ancient civilizations, ancient Egypt, obviously an expert on the vase. Let's reach out and see what he says.
Yeah.
And Ben, being the humble and kind person that he is, he's like, yeah, I kind of want to see some vases. I'm tired of seeing them locked behind glass and things like that. I want to see him in person. And Matt seems like a really cool guy. And yeah, sure, I'll go on and record an episode for a channel that technically did not exist.
Right.
So for him to come down here and, you know, I say this, not half-ass it. I mean, he really came down and put his intensity into the episode, and it was so much fun getting to meet him and getting to experience in person for the first time, you know, that wealth of knowledge that he has. There's no other, I mean, we started off the podcast with one of the biggest guests in the community, and I think I can speak for you, and I will forever be grateful for Ben for that. Not just all the vase talk and everything, but really taking a chance on Limitless. We'll always be grateful for that.
No doubt. Yeah, Ben, it was the biggest episode for a long time, up until just a month or so ago, when it was passed by Timothy Hogan, and then Graham Hancock also just recently passed. But yeah, it was a great episode. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but
you weren't alone in that.
I still don't know what the hell I'm doing, by the way. But Ben was great. He was so easy to talk to, and it was really cool to explore. At that point in time, I didn't really know if I was gonna go public with the vase thing. I was kind of like behind the scenes, and I wanted to give him the data and the information on the ones that I had collected. And so we completely skipped the vase topic, you know, which was like the one of the most interesting topics that we could have talked about. We completely skipped it because I didn't really want to put myself out there as somebody who was collecting these things to kind of, you know, whatever, but wanted to kind of skip all of that stuff. But
if I could share something from behind the scenes, I vividly remember that conversation of Ben asking, are you comfortable if I share that? And you were like, no, not at this time, not at this time. And me being an outside observer, I'm like, okay, vases? I don't know what that means, because I hadn't had the opportunity to even see one yet. So it's so funny going from that conversation of I don't want to be known or associated with them because I don't know what the pathway is that I'm going to select.
Right.
To now
it's like, fuck it, putting it all out there. It's all out there. I have, there's no holding.
That's one way to put it.
No holding back at this point. It's like once you take that little baby step and you put yourself out there a little bit. And I hadn't done that yet at that point in time because it was, you know, we didn't even have a channel yet. But once you do that and you have another conversation, it's like, yeah, whatever. I'm an open book at this point.
And it's harder, it's more stressful, and it's more challenging to, and I say hide just because I can't think of another word, but to hide those things where you're just like, you've been very transparent from the start just about the vases. this is why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because they need to be studied. They need to be examined. We need to get the information to more people, and they aren't doing anyone any good sitting behind museum glass.
Yeah.
And I think that's been the key, and everybody understands that. Even if they think that they're not real, they understand the fact of, I understand why he's doing it. And I applaud why he's doing it, so that we together, whether you believe they're real or not, that we can all learn together at the same time. And I think that has been the takeaway in all the communities, that you operate in with the vases.
Yeah. It would be pretty ridiculous and silly and ignorant to say that they're either all real or they're all not real. It's for each individual artifact has a different story. And man, those super high precision ones, and there's about 7 or 8 of them now, I guess, in the collection. I'm really hoping that those things are genuine and authentic and ancient and real, because if they are, that's a huge deal. But whatever the answer is, I'm going to bring it out. I'm still working on them, still studying them. We'll get into that a little bit later, but we're going to hopefully get to the truth. We're going to hopefully find out what the truth is about these things, and we can put it behind us. I mean, we can still talk about them because they're cool, but it won't be. Hopefully, we can solve a lot of these mysteries that we've kind of begun to nibble at over the first year.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. So yeah, Ben was freaking fantastic. Still a good friend, and I know we'll continue to work together in the future. And then we got Chris Dunn after that, and it was just another great episode. He had just gone on the Danny Jones show, who's become another one of my friends here recently, just lives down the street. And so, it was really cool to talk to Chris and get his theory about the power plant. That was kind of the first alternative theory that I think I've explored.
Mm-hmm.
And then everybody asks every week, like in every episode, every comments of seems like it comes up once or twice per episode. Jeffrey Drum, Landon
I'm
Kim.
so glad you're addressing this, like on the podcast versus in the comments. I'm so happy you're talking about this.
Yeah. It's a constant thing. Like, you got to get Landon Kim. Have you heard of him? It's like, yes, I've heard of him. We are talking. So me and Jeffrey are talking. It's just a difficult trip for him. He's in Egypt. We're going to definitely make it happen in 2025. I might see him in Egypt before he sees me in the States. I don't know, but we're going to work and find a really good date that works for Jeffrey to come in and do a podcast in 2025 for sure. So I can't wait to get down to that kind of that theory. Luke Caverns, I thought, Luke has become an incredible friend as well.
He's the absolute best person ever.
Yeah.
Like, just the nicest human being, one of the nicest human beings I've ever met in my entire life. And I just transparently, prior to getting into this, my only experience with YouTube was watching car crashes. Right. It's relaxing to me. It's cathartic. I don't really know why, but I just know that it does. But when I found out that Luke was going to, be coming on Limitless, again, we had, I think, maybe 100 subscribers at that point, and he's still willing to come down. And, Luke gets here and he's just giving us advice, giving us guidance. He's so excited to be here, just not just to see the vases, but to talk and interact with someone who's as passionate about Egypt and ancient Mesoamerica and ancient civilizations as he is. And kind of what you see on the episodes, what you see on his channel, that's not a show. That's who he is. He is just the nicest, kindest person, one of the nicest, kindest people I've ever met in my entire life. He's a funny guy, but he's also a really genuine person.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was pretty cool. He's more in the tomb theory, kind of in that kind of a camp. But he also brought up the ram water pump theory that I thought was interesting. The Chris Dunn's theory is pretty interesting, and then we talked about Jeffrey Drum's Landon Kim theory is pretty interesting. But I think he's definitely. I remember after, because our subscriber base was based on Ben. So Ben like, and it's still kind of, a lot of our subscribers originally came to us from Ben. I get so many comments. It's like, I've been here since the beginning, since day one, since you had Ben on. So I know a lot of people were like, why are you guys bringing Luke on? He's like a mainstream mainstream guy, and he's so not. He's super open minded. He's just he's open to the various possibilities. But sure, he leans more towards like the tomb theory for Egypt and some of the more um, you know commonly accepted theories. But he's open to all of it. Like he doesn't shut down or say no to any of the theories. He's wide open for exploring. And I think that's a part of the what makes Luke awesome as a guest. But it's also, we're kind of hearing that right now too with Kaylee coming on the show recently, with people being like, "What the hell? Why are you bringing on this mainstream?"
That was the
girl?"
funny mainstream person.
Yeah,
And it's like, and then there were some comments where it was like hard pass. And it's like, hey, if that's what you want to do, I'll support it. Amazing.
Yeah.
But like meeting, and I know we'll get to Kaylee's episode here in a minute, but just another one of those individuals that's genuine and wants to talk about those things that excite her with people who may or may not agree. That's an afterthought, whether they agree or not. She just wants to talk about those subjects, whether it's Neanderthals, the Hobbit people. She wants to engage with the community and talk about that. And that's one of the reasons you brought her on. And outside of the recording, she was an amazing person. And then during the recording, I mean, you can see for yourself, it was an amazing episode.
Yeah, no doubt. But yeah, Kaylee's great. She's feisty, man. She is feisty.
That's one way to put it.
Yeah. So she takes a lot of just and she goes back at people on online when they make posts on like X or whatever, or on YouTube comments. So she's fighting back with people, and that can escalate obviously very quickly. So it can get pretty entertaining pretty quick. I had no idea about the drama or the history, I should say, with her, and I think Jimmy Corsetti had like a back and forth, I guess. I don't even know what it was. I don't care what it was, but it was a couple of years ago. But that all kind of came out when in the comment section. But Kaylee had nothing but good things to say about really everybody, that she talked about. She wasn't like talking down to people. She, or about people or anything. I think she's just, some people are more mainstream than others. Some people are more, let's explore this possibility, and that's okay. It's good to have both sides, and it's good to be able to like hear the perspective and the point of view of people on both sides. I'm definitely more on the alternative side, just personally, because I feel like we know nothing. I feel like we really every year, every month, every day, we're learning something new about our ancient history and just about reality in general. And I think if we operate under the premise of we really don't know much about anything, then we can really learn a lot more and advance a lot faster. And that's what I love about the alt history community, is they're just open-minded, exploring possibilities, and that can be I guess people on the mainstream academic side can be what's the word, intimidating, I guess, for people on that side, because it's challenging their truth. It's challenging what they've been teaching to kids and the message that they're kind of attempting to spread out there amongst people to say, this is it, this is the story, this is the history, this is what we know, and these are facts. But in most cases, they're confusing facts with theory. They're confusing facts or truth with possibilities, and in a lot of cases, the possibilities that they're talking about are built upon other possibilities from the past. And so when your current theory about something is based on possibilities and not true hard facts of 5 other things, you have to really realize that every one of those things has a percentage chance of being true. And so the way to figure out the real percentage chance of that new thing, that new theory, you have to multiply the percentage of that being true by the percentage of the things that it was built upon being true. Every one of them.
It's a mathematical house of cards that could easily topple.
100%. Yeah. And so you're multiplying, 0.9 times 0.78 times 0.99 times 0.85 times all of these stories that we say, well, this is what we think. well, what it really is it has a percentage chance of being true. And so when you get through multiplying all of those, the actual story that we're left with today has like a 50% chance of being true, a 40% chance of being true, you know? So it's like, it's, I think that gets lost amongst a lot of people in every field, ancient history just being one of those fields, because people identify with being right and with being the keepers of the information. And so they skip a lot of the things that's being identified by the thinkers that are not bound to this version of history, this version of the truth. And I think, Clovis First is a good example of that within the ancient history community. I think the Younger Dryas impact is going to be proven to be factual at some point in the future, once people let go of the old story and the old kind of theories that nothing catastrophic has ever happened on this planet outside of, whatever, the dinosaurs getting destroyed, because and it took them finding that comet or that meteor to get to the point where they admit that, okay, well, this is how the dinosaurs went, and it feels like until they find the rock for the Younger Dryas, they're not going to admit it. So it's one of those things, I think, where um in the alt community, you have a lot of open-minded people just exploring possibilities and questioning the narrative, and I think that's really healthy.
I agree. And going back to something that was said on the Snake Brothers episode really resonated with me, and it was kind of said in jest, but to me it was really it's super reflective of, I think, everything today is that in terms of mainstream science, archaeology, ancient history, history, and things like that, the final edition is written every day. So it's they will say, this is how it is, this is what it was. There's no challenging it. And then 2 days later, nope, now it's this, and it's, if you live your life like that, or you approach history, or even live your life like that, with it, this is how it's going to be now and forever, every single day. Like you're closing your mind off to it, and it's sad. And going back to this, you can go back throughout history, and how many things were, all right, this is the best practice, this is what we know that it was, and it can be completely different. You can go all the way back until the Earth was the center of the universe. You can go to the 50s when a woman's, a couple of months pregnant, the doctor's like, I would switch to Marlboro Lights. We thought smoking was okay for a woman that was pregnant. Now we know that that's different. So you just, in my opinion, at least, you just got to be open. You've got to be open to things. And look, there are some things, the first time you hear it, you're like, yeah, that's like a 0.99999% chance being true. Still going to listen. Still going to hear you out. Because you know what? Maybe
and that was Tim Hogan having Jesus's bones for you, I think, right?
That one, I still don't know how I'm so excited to get to that episode.
Let's not go there yet. Yeah. So Chris Cottrell, for me, that was a huge episode because, and I feel like one of the most underrated episodes that we've done by far, because it was so educational. And the Carolina Bays are such an important geological feature that nobody has ever heard of. And Chris obviously thinks that they're very, very old, 780,000 years old, I think, give or take, if my memory is serving me. But it's also possible that they were created at the onset of the Younger Dryas. It's possible. And I know Chris doesn't think that, but that's I think could be another line of evidence for the comet impact theory. But regardless of the age of these things, we need to study them, and we need to understand what happened and when it happened, because it can teach us a lot about our history. And it's just one of those things that's like, just, you go and you ask an academic about this, and I don't like, it's like, you don't get an answer. You get,
well, you do. It's wind and rain.
Well, most people are kind of realize that that's garbage. Like, but what most people say now is, oh, I haven't researched it. And it's just a way to just hand wave it away. And it's just a way to like, just be like, I don't know. I'm not an expert in that field, but you're an expert in every other freaking field. You just choose to ignore the topics that are actually interesting, that we can learn something about, and that could teach us about the true course of human history. And so it's one of those things that's like glaring evidence of a catastrophe at some point in our history that we're just completely ignoring. And again, it's like you ask Dibble about it, you ask Miyamo about it. It's like, oh, I don't know. It's not my field, you know. But vases are.
Well, that's the thing where I'm going to jump in, because you've seen it so many times. Well, that's not my field. And then something that is clearly not their field, they sure as hell have a comment, an opinion on. So you're not comfortable speaking outside of your field here, but you're comfortable, case in point, the vases over here. Like
it's a challenge. It's a challenge.
Pick a lane, bro.
It's a challenge that I'm trying to put out there to people to actually look into these things and not just hand wave them away. No matter who you are, no matter what field you come from, no matter how you're identified. If the Carolina Bays and the Younger Dryas are two things out of many, but two very, very big and very, very important things that we really need to research and that we really need to understand.
The Carolina Bays are, and just to be clear, for those that are listening that haven't seen the episode, go check it out, because we're not talking about bays as in one or two that happen to be in North Carolina. We're talking about hundreds, even thousands of geographical. I mean, they're just, it's right now it looks like a hole filled with water, but they're all up and down the eastern seaboard. So this wasn't some one-time thing, or there's one or two laying around. It is up and down the entire seaboard.
It's like 500,000.
500,000.
Yeah.
And I know there's LiDAR out there that you can go look at it. And when you start to look at that, you just can't dismiss it. Something major happened when it's, I still think, up for debate, and that's healthy, but you cannot deny that something, I'm not going to say disastrous, something major happened that caused all of those to occur on the eastern seaboard and some in the Midwest, kind of on that opposite side there.
Talk to people about Billy Carson behind the scenes. What are your thoughts on Billy?
I've shared this with you before in private, but and I'm a transparent person, so I'll share it out there. When I first heard we had booked Billy Carson as a guest on the show, I did some research, and he is a very successful businessman, very, proper, sharp on his podcasts, and I transparently made an assumption. I thought he was going to be this individual that, since I'm not the headliner, I'm the help behind the scenes, that I would immediately be dismissed. And as soon as he walked in the building, he took his sunglasses off and he introduced himself, asked for my name. And as I'm sharing who I am and kind of what we're going to do today, nothing else exists in the world except for me. And in that moment, felt like an asshole. I did, because I was like, great, this is, this is the guy coming in. We're gonna have to treat him like royalty and yada, yada, yada. And I built up this whole scenario in my head, unfair to Billy. And he walked in and man, he just popped that bubble and was like, Ryan, nice to meet you. How long you been doing this? He wasn't even concerned about getting to you yet, getting to the vases. He just wanted to talk to me and have a conversation with me. And then he got to meet Joe, who kind of helped organize the flights and everything. Talked to her for 5 minutes. And then when we got back into discussing the vases and things like that, the limited knowledge that I had at that point, I've got much more now, but I was contributing to the conversation and he was engaging with me and giving me his thoughts. So you see this, you see Billy on our episode, you see Billy, all over YouTube and things like that. Outside of that, he is just one of the nicest and most genuine people I've met. And I could not have been more wrong. And I'm proud to say that. Just a hell of a guy, a really nice guy.
Should teach you something about assumptions more than anything.
I learned hard that day. And I think I told you right afterwards, I was like, man, I got to talk to you real quick. Because you asked me how it went. And I was very transparent with it of like, hey, this is what I thought. This is how I walked into it, and
good for you.
Boy, was I wrong. Yeah, and I don't do that anymore. I'll research our guests and kind of understand what their shtick is, but I don't read anything else outside of kind of their content. And now I walk into it open.
He gets in with his recent debate, if you want to even call it a debate, with Wesley Huff. He gets attacked a lot online, which, you put yourself out there, whatever. But I went to the Conscious Awards, Billy Carson's second annual Consciousness Awards last year. And the following that he has and the people that came to see him were so deeply connected with him. It was incredible at just almost like a spiritual level of the people and the connection that he had with all the people that were clearly in his life and clearly there to support him. But it was a couple of thousand people that the man has deep connections with, and all good people, super chill, super cool environment. Met some new friends, but genuine, I think you said genuine. I think that's a really great word. He's very intelligent.
Yes.
Very intelligent, both emotionally and intellectually, very intelligent. But the genuine is what came across to me as well. Just like one of the coolest dudes that you could possibly want to sit down and have a conversation with or eat dinner with. He and I went to dinner the night before the episode. I was really impressed with Billy as an individual, as a human being. Now, some of the shit that he says, I mean, some of the shit that he talks about, dude, I mean, it's wild. It's absolutely wild. It's like, I mean, it is what it. I mean,
that's why I made the distinction, but of my interaction before we recorded and then afterwards.
Yeah.
That's
no,
what
I mean, not just on our podcast, but like just in general, like it's just, and it's wild, and people hate that. Like people can't stand that.
To be honest with you, from my limited experience with him, I have no doubt in my mind that he's lost zero sleep of it.
Right. Yeah.
It's already behind him.
Yeah.
He's looking forward. He's looking that way, and and he's going to continue to move. And what people need to understand is that we're talking about Billy Carson like he's a monolith. Her name eludes me, but his wife, Elizabeth is another superstar. So Billy isn't on his own. They are a couple. They are a team.
It's a power couple.
Yeah. And he's not going anywhere at all. Not going anywhere at all.
No, not at all. Yeah, I mean, the next kind of thing that we got into was a little bit of the Kurt Cobain stuff, but maybe we come back to that in a few minutes and talk about the Timothy Hogan episode. Timothy Hogan's our biggest episode. It's
what's it at now?
86,000.
86,000 could be our first 100K.
Yeah. I mean, Graham Hancock's catching them, but the chart on the views chart on Timothy is very unique. It just keeps going up and up and up. So it's fun to watch, man. Timothy. That was a wild episode. It started at dinner.
Can we go back a little bit?
Please.
So I think I'm not sure the exact steps, but I think you had sent me an email and were like, hey, what do you think about reaching out to this guy? And I'd read some Grandmaster Knights Templar stuff about him. And I mean, he was number 13, so we found his email and we were like, oh, shit, let's send an email, see what he does. Responded back maybe a day or two later. He's like, yeah, I'd love to. And then, logistically started working it all out, and we knew about him, but boy, we didn't know about him. And to kind of pick up where you left off, it started at dinner.
Yeah.
And I would just love to go back
down to a normal dinner at the Ritz. We're
outside too.
Yeah.
Around other people. So they got a show about some of the stuff that we were talking about. And it was, I just remember sitting at that dinner, and I'm a talker, you know this. I just remember sitting there the entire time, like, and he kept going on and on and on while he was eating his ginormous ass fish that he ordered. But on the drive home, so we get done with dinner. We're like, all right, we're going to meet up the next morning. We're going to do the recording. I remember you texting me, and that shit was fire. Tomorrow's going to be great. And I was like, I don't have any words.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, I can't wait to we'll have Timothy on again in 2025, I know. But just a good dude. He's got a wild story. I mean, just a wild story with Knights Templar. So Praveen Mohan's like, well, what do you think? Do you think he has Jesus's bones? And I'm like, I don't know, man. I'm just the host, you know. I think again, I'm a percentage guy, so I think that my percentage for whether they still have those and whether they have the arcs, um, I don't know. I don't
So
know.
that episode was, so going back to that one is, our studio setup is my production desk. I used to be in the room with you and the guest. I no longer am. I'm in an office next door. And there was a point and it was dead quiet in the room. And he's talking about the bones of Jesus, Mary Magdalene, John the Baptist, and their kids, and that, they went and found them and they moved them to a vault location, and there's 2 in the United States, and one of them's on Native American land, and just dropping all of this knowledge. And you're like, have you seen him? And he's like, I have. And you very deadpan went, I'll trade you a couple of vases for the bones. I lost my shit in the corner.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
And I'd been like, we were 12 episodes deep at that point. I had never talked on the podcast, well, except for our episode, but it never really talked, made a noise in the corner. That was the first time where I just couldn't help myself. It was the fun, like this very serious, intense, like world changing news. And Matt's like, how can I'll trade you a couple of vases.
Right.
And then episode 14, Jesus bones.
Yeah.
That would get some people here,
There's
though.
been many more laughs since that episode, though.
There
I gotta
has.
say, yeah.
I stopped trying to hide it, authentic self.
Yeah.
But that, you talk about, if you come down, record an episode with us, we'll show you the vases. Imagine who we get with Jesus's bones.
Yeah, true. yeah.
Sneaking that one in there. You want to come
have
see Jesus?
We'd have a migration of, it would be like that would be.
Either that or the Vatican police, one of the two.
Right, yeah, that's true. That's true.
I think is, I won't comment much more on those because in my opinion, they'll find a way to find you.
Yeah. Yeah, Randall Carlson was he's an amazing human being. He
is.
He's obviously a wealth of knowledge, just a good dude. You call Randall just to talk about the episode and what's going on. It's a couple of hours until the conversation's over. But but you love, it's like a once in a lifetime experience to be on the phone with this guy here.
He's a teacher.
He's a brilliant, like, I feel like he's like one of the brilliant minds of our time that posthumously is going to be like remembered and talked about as just like somebody that was a very open-minded thinker and somebody who really helped push sort of our knowledge and our understanding and conversations about possibilities and talking about possibilities be okay and accepted. And, I think that's his contribution to really just humanity, I think is going to be big.
Well, he gets,
and it already has been big.
1,000% agree. And what makes him so unique is, look, we've met people that just talk to talk. They just love to hear themselves talk. Where Randall's could not be anything farther from that. Like, if you show even the remote interest in learning, he is going to stop everything that he is doing to educate and discuss with you. And you mentioned earlier, we were getting ready to release this episode and I needed to verify some information. So I set up a quick call. I had a calendar invite out there 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And I was on the phone with him for 2 hours because he was, and we got to what I needed in the first 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then he's like, were you familiar with this? And I'm a curious person.
Between the two of you, I'm surprised it didn't go longer.
But I was like, no, I'm not familiar with this. He's like, well, hold on. And he's pulling books down and he's opening up different files. His wife's bringing him tea. And like, he's pushing back appointments that he had just to talk with me. Yeah. I ran into him at Cosmic Summit and it's the same thing. Him, his wife, their son, they genuinely love people and they genuinely love interacting with people that like to talk about the things that they know about and that they're familiar with or are willing to learn and be open to it. And I tell you, get the opportunity to hear Randall speak, whether it's on a podcast or in person. It's a great time and you walk away learning something. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways.
No doubt. Yeah, Randall reached out again about a month ago, and he wants to come back on the show. So he's not like a confirmed guest because he's still figuring out his plans
Yeah.
for any specific date. I mean, but he will be back in hopefully probably February. It'll be February, give or take a month. It might be January, it might be March, but
I'm looking forward to just seeing
too.
him again.
Me too.
Just seeing him
Yeah,
again.
he's a good dude, and he. I think the one thing, and I practice non-regret, but one thing that I would have done differently if I had it all to do over again was just to put every second of that episode out. And that was kind of when I was kind of finding my way with trying to understand what makes a great episode and all that. And I gave you a little bit I cut out a bit too much of the 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 long form, I guess you would call it. And so I think we probably had an extra half an hour of content or so on that episode that if we next time we have them, we're just going to let the whole thing run and just release every last word. I went into that. I think I was kind of thrown off because I went into that episode with like 12 things that I wanted to cover and that I wanted to talk about with Randall. And it was like in my notes, I'm like, I can't wait to ask him about this and this and this and this. And I want to get his thoughts on that and that and that. It's going to be so great. It's going to be an amazing episode. But you ask him one question and it's an hour and a half later, you're still talking about that one thing. And then you go to the moon and an hour and a half later, you're still talking about the moon. And so it's like, we couldn't ask him about, pole flips and Mars and like all the other things that I wanted to talk to him about. So I'm looking forward to the next episode, but I'm going into it with zero expectation and intention about what we're going to talk about because he's going to dictate that.
And I still love the moon, for example. Hold on, let me pull up some images. And he already has an entire PowerPoint filled with images. And,
Yeah.
and that's the thing about Randall is obviously, yes, he can recall a lot of this from memory, and he does. But he also is like, you don't believe me? Look.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you the documentation. I'm going to show you the research that, we're not pulling these things out of our ass. This is what happened. And again, he likes to teach and he likes to educate people. And if you're curious and open to listen, he's willing to spend the time with you.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. The Marcel Foti episode, I've told myself a number of times that I don't want to do, Zoom calls and make them on episodes anymore. And I think after the most recent one that we just did again, that I'm back and convinced that we don't need to do that. We don't, it's so much of a better experience in person when we have people in person. And so, ideally Marcel would have been in town to talk about geopolymer theory. But I think out of all the guests that I've talked to, even Chris Dunn's power plant theory, for me, the evidence for geopolymer is just, and people are going to get pissed off with this. It's just very minimal. It's very minimal. And I get that he's supposedly making these little rocks in his room. I don't see it. And I don't see that being I don't see pouring cement as the way that all of the vases were made and every stone structure around the entire planet was made. Even when you look at the Brescia ones that are limestone and calcite, you get people jumping into every comments, cast, not carved, and it's like, dude, these are two different stones that we know exactly where they form. We know exactly where the quarry is. And it's like, it's for me, it's one of the least likely, and even amongst most people within the ancient civilization community that I talk to, I ask Chris Dunn about it. Everybody's like, I'm open-minded, but there's always one person that kind of spearheads this and it never turns into anything and there's never any proof. And it's so Marcel's the guy to do that. That's fantastic. But I want to be completely transparent and open and honest. I'm not trying to bash anybody or talk negative about anybody. I'm glad that he's doing the work and I'm glad that he's putting in the the work to see if this is actually a possibility. So I'm very grateful that he's doing that. I just think that it's unlikely. It's a very low percentage chance that because he's pointing out there's natron here and there's natron here and there's natron here and there's natron here all over the earth, and there's an ancient site within 200 miles, and then over here there's an ancient site within 5 miles, and over here there's an ancient site within 100 miles, and he's really attributing every ancient site around the world. None of them were cut; they were just all poured, and so you don't need to comment. But I wanted to at least let the audience know that for me that one is at this point, given the evidence that we have, unlikely, and I hope that he proves me wrong.
Well, I think that's what the stark difference is between kind of when I say that the alternative history community and the mainstream community is that you're very transparent as, hey, I don't think it's that, but I listened. I was open to what he talked about, and I would love nothing more than to be proven wrong, because that's just another advancement forward where I think a lot in the mainstream community would be like, wrong, moving on, where you're open to it.
Yeah. Dan Richards is an awesome human being. He's a great human being. He's hilarious. A good dude. Just doesn't care. Just fires off. He's like Kaylee on X. He's just firing off at people. But honestly, one of the nicest, most humble, down to earth, genuine, kind people, respectful, just appreciative. I mean, like one of the top in each of those categories that I've had the pleasure to meet. So I'm humbled to call Dan a friend.
Oh, me too. And the first time you see the guy, you're like, the construction site's over there, dude.
Come on now.
He said it himself. That's not my opinion.
This is an assumption and judgment again.
He said it is. I know, I'm getting better about it. But he's even said it himself, but he's one of those people that, again, you underestimate, because he doesn't have this steeped academic background, being in a classroom. He's self-educated. And what Dan does better than anyone on the planet, in my opinion, is that he just doesn't disagree or say that, no, you've gotten that wrong. He does his research and he finds the papers, and he just doesn't take someone's word for it. He checks their sources and really pulls that thread to go down that rabbit hole and find the true answer. The other thing about Dan too is when he gets it wrong, he'll be the first to tell you that he got it wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that's what,
second. He got the vase thing wrong but he made a video. I told him immediately he was wrong about the vase. So it was kind of the second in that case. But yeah, he did make a video. You're absolutely right. Your point is correct that he's going to, if he's misses something or gets some bit of information wrong, he's going to come out and own that. And not a lot of people do that. Most people just continue to like actually begin to lie to cover for what they've said, because they're so afraid of being proven wrong or that they've been wrong in the past that they create stories and they create lies. And I'm not going to name anyone in particular, but with FD initials. But you can build that lie on top of a lie on top of a lie to cover a story, and that I think happens unfortunately with some highly egoic people everywhere, no matter what group you're identified with.
Yeah, and it was going back to Dan. It was just so much fun to see him, just the breakneck speed in which he rose in popularity, and he changed nothing. He was just himself, doing his research, and he goes. I'm excited for the fact that, one, he's an amazing human being. We got to hang out with him and everything. And then to see him sit here, and then a couple of months later, he's on the biggest podcast in the world. And if you listen to ours and you listen to Joe's, Dan is the same person, same exact person, because that's who he is.
No doubt about it. Yeah, Stefan Burns, I feel like, was another one of those underrated episodes. Although it's kind of like a Chris Cottrell, although it's almost 10,000 now, which is it's still kind of low for us at this point as a channel. It would have been a big episode at first, but But yeah, Stefan is again one of the most respectful, kind, calm, rational, intelligent people that I've met, that I've talked to. Just like super spiritual guy,
Yeah.
super like connected with the earth, and just a good overall dude. You know, he's like, so if you had a daughter, you'd want her to marry Stefan. He's just a good dude. Um, Luckily, I had all boys, you know, I learned a lot from him, and he really helped me. We're going to have Ben Davidson on the show in this coming year. We're talking about right now. I've been communicating with him just today, actually, and he needs to. He'll be getting back with me on what date he wants to come on the show. But you know, Ben has a more um, um, a more urgent message about the pole movement and the impending potential catastrophe. And I was put at ease by Stefan's take on the whole pole situation, the whole pole shift situation, what's happening within the earth, and really also just learned a lot from him. Specifically, I think the Schumann resonance was
That was my biggest takeaway. I still talk about that.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Yeah.
He and well, so you always have those. I'll just share a personal story. So, 14 plus years ago, my mother passed away unexpectedly. And I still remember about 30 minutes before I got the phone call that I walked outside and I was like, there is something different about the sky color, the wind, the temperature. Like in the core of my being, I knew something was different. Couldn't tell what it was, but something was different. And then about 20 minutes later, I get a call from my sister, and, our mother had passed away unexpectedly at 42 years old. And it's always been a core memory for me. And it wasn't until Stefan's episode, he talked about Schumann resonances. And, for those that haven't seen that episode, I highly suggest you go watch it and come back to this immediate point. But that helped on a personal level explain that event so much for me. And it kind of put me at ease of, that was something occurred in the world, and my temporal lobes, my brain had the ability to pick up on it. And then there's something else he said, and we weren't recording. We were in my office at the time, and I kind of made the complaint about, I was born too late to explore the world, and I'm born too early to explore the stars. So boo-hoo me. And without skipping a beat, Stefan's like, well, maybe it's time you explore yourself. And that's one of those statements you're like, oh, shit, he's right. I need to shut up. Yeah. But so those two things out of Stefan's episode, I've taken away a lot of things from a lot of different episodes, but just on a personal level, those were the two biggest things that I took away from Stefan. And everything you said about him being a genuine person, nice guy, trying to make the world a better place and educate people is 100% right.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. Great dude. Yeah. We got into religion a little bit with Neil Sindlak.
We didn't get into the shallow end of it. You dove head first into the deep end.
We got deep, man.
There was no wading into it. You're like, fuck it, let's do it.
Yeah. That was great. That was a great conversation. Neil's a good dude. We've kept in touch since, and he's actually going to have me on his show in a couple of weeks. So I think he wants to talk vases maybe.
That's going to be cool. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure.
Again, really wealth of knowledge, not traditionally educated.
Right.
In what he knows, but he knows a lot, and not just surface level. We're talking about details, and he's able to connect kind of all of these religions, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, and kind of explain, not in a judgment way or saying you're a bad person for believing this, but just kind of explaining some of the origins of those religions. And I think it's really cool. Yeah, he did an amazing job.
Apple. Yeah. The Garden of Adam. Come on, dude.
I was like, what?
It was a terrible joke.
No, I'm just slow.
Yeah.
That's what, don't blame yourself for that.
Yeah. And then Graham Hancock was pretty much next, I think. Yeah. Graham was next and kind of got into, we asked him about his thoughts on religion too, but obviously a great conversation with Graham. I didn't want to push it too far with him in terms of like the time. Graham was suffering from migraines at the time. He says that he always gets migraines on full moons, and that he knows now after experiencing it for so many years that it's really a thing. It's like it's not like a coincidence kind of a thing. It's really he actually he gets migraines at full moons, and so of course it was a full moon the night we recorded. But he did freaking great. And I mean, it was like even though he was, you could tell they would come on and they would come off. The second we hit the record button, he was on.
Totally different person.
Yeah,
and I mean, in terms of energy level, like he gets. So I'm so glad we got to this point, because I've got a question for you. I know that you read Chris Dunn's book when you were younger. You read Graham Hancock's book when you were younger. Did you ever think, when you read those books, even back when we started this podcast, that you would be sitting, having dinner, and then sitting across from Graham Hancock? I mean, did that ever, even watching Ancient Apocalypse season 1, did that ever cross your mind that he'd be sitting in the studio talking to you?
Not even 4 months ago did that cross my mind, that Graham would be here. It was like crazy. It was so surreal to be talking to Graham and to have that experience. I mean, he's just a legend. I mean, he's just an absolute legend. Our podcast is, I think when he came on, it was under 20,000 probably or something, So it was like, no, I reached out. I got his email address happened to be connected to another email that I was on like a year and a half ago with Cosmic Summit and or maybe it wasn't even that long, but I I'm like, oh, Graham Hancock, I'm going to save this, and maybe this will come in handy one day. So
I'm going to save that.
Yeah. So
putting that in my pocket.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and add the contacts. And, so I reached out to him, and it was like freaking perfect timing that when I finally got the courage to reach out to him. And I was like, hey, you want to come on the show? And I told him a little bit about it. And he replied like 2 days later and was like, it's incredible timing because I'm currently setting up podcasts for a tour that I'm doing to promote Ancient Apocalypse 2. I had no idea that Ancient Apocalypse 2 was coming out. Like
no one did at that point.
Later.
It was right. They had trailers, but nobody knew the exact date.
Yeah, I hadn't even seen a trailer yet. So it was just like random coincidence, and it worked out just perfectly, and was able to have dinner with him and Santha and my wife Crystal, and they're just great people, like super down to earth, like just kind. His wife it's another one of those like Billy Carson, Elizabeth Carson power couple kind of situation. His wife is very strong, very intelligent, very kind, very funny, very, quick witted and sharp. And
isn't she a world renowned photographer as well?
She is, yeah.
Like
yeah,
as I understood it, he would go do his site exploration and education, and she's the one that's I mean, taking a lot of the photos that you see associated with Graham's work. So, but yeah, both of them were just the nicest people. They
were, yeah. Yeah, he invited us to go see him in Bath, where he lives, and in the UK, and potentially on a ayahuasca journey in South America with him next year with Paul. Was it Paul Stamets, the
mushroom guy?
Yeah, fantastic fungi guy. Yeah, so just immediately clicked with them, and it was like great connection, and all four of us felt it. We just had a great time at dinner, and then just came in here, and it was just a super smooth, easy, great conversation. And so it was wild. It was just a wild. It's like, yeah, crazy.
It was funny. I know that we kind of we'll get to his next, or we can go ahead and get to it now. But from a production standpoint, Jimmy Corsetti was here on that Wednesday, and Graham was scheduled to be here that Friday. And after we finished recording, Jimmy was kind of like, well, when are you thinking about releasing this? And you said that, well, we have Graham in here on Friday, and we're going to prioritize his. I hope you're okay with that. And Jimmy goes, the hell are you talking about? You get Graham's out before you get mine. Like, you get his out.
Yeah.
Like, he was just, even the large following that Jimmy has, over 1 million.
Yeah.
You know, he was like, you get Grams out there because he is.
It's like 1.8 million or something.
Yeah, it's
like,
ridiculous amount of people. It's like Graham's one of those people. He's at the top. You get his message out there, you get his word out there, and his thoughts way before you do mine. So I thought that was cool.
It is cool. Yeah, Jimmy was cool the whole time. Everybody has just a huge amount of respect for Graham, I think, you know. So yeah, Jimmy was freaking great too. Love Jimmy. New friend. I mean, he's just a good dude. He was so he was so respectful and just so classy and just so cool to just everybody that he came in contact with the entire time.
Yep.
You know, and I didn't really know much about him. I didn't know what to expect. You know, I know that you know, whatever. I think he you know, I guess on X or whatever, if you've got some wild theories, there's probably going to be some people that are attacking you, and you're probably going to defend yourself. So I was just a little bit familiar with some of the back and forth stuff, but I really didn't know what to expect, but was just blown away by Jimmy and his character and the way that he handled himself over the couple of days that we were here. And again, I feel like I got a new friend in Jimmy. You know, he's been. Even like with the Kaylee stuff and having Kaylee on the episode, I know that they have some history there, but Jimmy's been liking all of the posts and you know, been very.
Well, they don't take it personal.
No, he's super cool.
We have different opinions, and that's healthy. That's what's needed.
Yeah.
And hats off to Jimmy. I know a lot of people don't give him the same respect of keeping their attacks not personal, but in my experience, Jimmy doesn't. He's like, here's why you're wrong, X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And
he's exploring some big topics that are really important, and he's brought a lot of really interesting perspectives and topics to light that haven't really been explored at the level of detail, with the level of kind of just diving into it from an investigative standpoint that it hadn't been done like that before Jimmy. And I think the one that blew me away was his Atlantis video, like several years ago, when it first came out, and I think that's kind of probably, I'm assuming, when he built a lot of his following, because that's when I started to follow him.
I think it's what he said at dinner, that was like he had made videos before, but that was his one that just went straight up.
It was wild. That was such a wild and incredibly compelling video on Atlantis with the Rishat structure. And that's another thing, and that's another guy where, like a year ago, I would have not thought there was a chance in hell that I'd have been talking to Jimmy Corsetti about Atlantis. You know, I mean, that's the freaking coolest thing ever. Like it's a very, very compelling theory. I know a lot of people go with the Azores, you know, thing and Randall's theory, but it's like Jimmy's point is, Rishat could have been the capital city, and there were like 10 other potential locations and settlements of the Atlantean people. So I think between that and the work that he's done on like the Baalbek and the list goes on and on and on.
Göbekli Tepe, and why the hell are we building olive trees there? And I mean, brought a lot of attention to just all of that. And I think what he does really well is that he asks questions. And he just doesn't stop when he gets an answer, because that'll lead into another question. And he really moves quick, crowdsources a lot of, you know, thoughts and ideas from X and online, which I think is important. And for those of you who've been following him on X recently, one of the things that he is, you know, pushing with President-elect Trump and Elon Musk is to get a Department of Archaeology. And for the life of me, and I would love to hear everybody's opinions in the comments, I've been trying to think of a really neat acronym for Department of Archaeology to spell something like DOG, you know, Department of Government Efficiency spells Doge, or Dog, Doge. Trying to think of something unique that I can share with Jimmy to kind of help move that along a little bit, because if we value archaeology and the sciences and things like that, they need to have their own standalone department to really develop those out and, you know, continue to move them forward.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the Bob Greenyer episode, dude. Well, I mean, the Bob Greenyer dinner. Why don't tell me what was so out of 100% full understanding of what Bob was talking about at dinner. What was your percent?
-10. So look, I'm a confident person, and I can generally pick things up very, very quickly.
Yeah.
I remember during that dinner, and he is talking and he is pulling things out. And I look over at you and you're like, yeah, and I'm like, I'm the dumbest bastard of this tale. I have no idea what anybody's talking about. And then he tries to help poor little old Ryan. You know, Bob's up here. He's going to come down here and try to help move me along. And he goes, what happens if you leave your food on you leave your food on your plate for a couple of months? What happens? I was like, well, it breaks down. He's like, well, why? Time. Well, what is time? Like I felt like a Neanderthal, which we know aren't dumb from Kaylee's episode.
Right.
But I just felt like, I remember leaving that dinner and I was like, shit, I guess I'm going to learn tomorrow. Like this is going to be news for me. Made total sense once the episode was fully done. But that first dinner, I was just like, okay. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. I don't even know if I'm breathing right at this point.
You didn't know if it was English or like what language we were speaking. I mean, look, it is super high level stuff and very, very difficult to follow and understand especially if you're in the conversation and you're there. I think it's maybe a little bit easier if you're watching it on an episode or on a TV or something, but like sitting here across from him, even during the episode was very challenging.
I don't see how you did it because when I'm watching from a YouTuber, I could pause it and be like, I got to go look some stuff up. I don't know what he's saying where you're in the trenches in here. Like,
so much shit on our podcast falls into the category of big if true. And this is like one of those things that's like, if this is true, if what he's saying is true, it's like the biggest thing in the world. It's but then you go to another guest and it's like, okay, well, if what Ryan Bledsoe's saying, it's the biggest thing in the world. If what Neil is saying, then
Ashton Forbes, if what he's saying is huge of true.
Right. All you could go on and on and on, but definitely Bob's stuff in terms of like clean, limitless energy and the fractal toroidal moment is
got it.
Yeah, it's I mean it's huge, but like I feel like at this point the Malcolm Bendel thing has to be garbage. Like I feel like I reached out to him to come on the show, no response. I thought his and I'm not trying to, this is just facts. I'm not trying to like talk bad about the guy. I'm sure he's a great guy, but his presentation at the Cosmic Summit in 2024, he got up there and he immediately called like 3 or 4 people. I was so looking forward to his presentation to learn about like his contraption and his device. He just called other people up to talk for him. And Bob Greenyer was one of those people that came up to talk for him. And then it's like, okay, he finally stopped calling people up. He's going to talk. He played a video that he had created for like the last like 15 minutes of his presentation. And it's just like, this guy needs to do everything to prove that he's not full of shit. And he's just not doing that. And he's just like hiding behind other people, hiding behind a video. And it's like, what if this was real? I feel like we would know about it by now. His contraption, but Bob's, what the technology that Bob and that Malcolm and now even Randall is kind of standing behind and exploring from a sacred geometry standpoint, big if true. And it's something that we need to figure out, like as a community, as a group, as a people. We really need to figure this out, because like that's kind of like why I want to get Bob to come on the show and talk to Eric Weinstein or something, like some like scientist that he can come and talk to. And Bob's like, I'm all for it, man. He's like, sign me up. I'm there. And so for me, that shows that Bob has a lot of confidence in what he's talking about, that he's willing to debate like a highly intelligent, member of the academic or scientific community rather. So I'm rooting for Bob. I'm really, really rooting for Bob. I really enjoyed my time spent with him. He really opened up. He's a great dude. I want to have him back on the show. I want to talk more about it. I want to learn more about it. But I think even Bob would understand that it's so high level. It's so confusing for people to even wrap their head around the information and the knowledge in the first place, that it's just a challenging. But so was quantum mechanics, and so was, the theory of gravity, and so was, everything that's ever happened. So the question is this legit? Is this real? Is this true? And if it is, it's freaking huge.
Well, that was another piece of the episode where Bob was like, "Do you know how gravity works?" And I'm like, shit, I never thought about it. And then he proceeds to, share some of the other reasons, kind of the scientific explanation behind gravity. And I was like, yeah, this one's going to be tough to edit and go through, right? They're easy when you know what they're talking about, but like with the ones where I'm not familiar with the content or it's so heady and up here and high level, those take a little bit. The funnest part of that episode, though, is I think myself and others kind of channeled through you, Matt, towards the part of the episode you just said, you know what? I need you to explain to me all of this like I'm a child. Not one of your children,
right?
but just like a normal child. And to me, he did an amazing job kind of breaking it down at that to that level where you understand it. So, but again, Bob seems like one of those guys, even if someone does, say, hey, I think you got this wrong, Bob is going to be like, okay, great. I'm going to fix that. And because he wants to move it forward. He wants to bring that technology forward and get it right. So, I mean, just as you mentioned earlier, he's open to it, and he's going to continue to move forward with it and get his end goal is to get cheap, limitless energy to everyone. And I think that scares a lot of people, and I think that threatens a lot of people. So
yeah, a lot of people have died mysteriously by researching that in the past.
On the ones that have worked.
Yeah, right.
That's the only comment I'll make on
that. Yeah. Praveen Mohan, just another, he's just another gem of a human being. Like, he's just like what you see, the smile, the laugh, that's who he is. Like, he's just like just like a big teddy bear, basically.
He's so much fun.
Super nice guy.
And that was one of the first ones, I've, so the things that you get to experience that you don't really ever think about or run through your head, but like culturally, right? So Praveen comes in and I was like, hey, I'm going to get you some ice water. And he looked at me, he's like, why would I want ice water? He's like, you and your damn Americans with ice water. He's like, just give me room temperature water. And
I don't think he quite said it like that.
No, oh God, no, that's hyperbole on my end. I'm emphasizing, or kind of, it's in my head. It was much more crazier, but it was one of those things to where you're just like, oh, like we're the Americans, we're really one of the only countries that drinks ice water. But Praveen
coming in all the way from India was really cool. We've had a lot of guests that have come
super
in
neat
from overseas that are just coming in to see us, and it's like that's really cool.
Well, he flew in, recorded with us, flew out a day later, right?
Yeah.
And that was, that's one day of travel. I mean, he's 15, 16 hours.
Yeah.
And was just excited to be here, excited to be on the show, and then
I think he said it was 24 hours.
That's
he had to go to
wild.
Germany and then he had to,
and then through customs and all of that. Like it's not easy, and we're so grateful that they came over. And he, like I said, Praveen's just such a cool human.
No doubt. Yeah. I don't know how old the stuff in India is that we're talking, like the temples and stuff. I like his theory about how they were built on older structures. That makes a lot of sense. I think that similar things probably all over the world at sacred sites. But there were some really cool mysteries there that we covered. And we recorded a episode for his channel about the vases, which was fun. We did that in here.
Outside of Danny Jones, that was one of the first times that you've kind of been on someone else's channel talking about the vases and things like that. So even then that was, kind of a new experience for you as well.
No doubt. And then Ashton Forbes, like the Ashton is very much on the side of the camp that all of the technology and orbs that we're seeing, I don't want to put words into his mouth. First off, let me say, good dude, super cool, like super into his work and very passionate about his theory and great. We just had a one-on-one dinner with him and got to know him, and a super nice guy. Again, very respectful, very very serious about what he does, obviously, and I knew it was going to be a great episode, and he was just a pro when he came on the show, and we recorded here. It was like it was one of the easiest and one of the most mind blowing podcasts. Yes. Like if another like big if true kind of a thing. Ashton's more on the side of this is all government technology, and for me, I think that it's people always ask like, what do you really think? You know, because I'm just sitting here
about
like,
the drones in New
about
Jersey.
everything,
About everything.
about everything.
Okay.
Because I'm just sitting here asking the questions and kind of letting the guests talk, and that's my thing. Like I like to let the guests talk and get their whole point out and not interrupt or not interject with like this is my personal belief or opinion or percentage or whatever. And so that's I think that most people enjoy that, and I enjoy that. But for an episode like this with a recap, it's nice to be able to speak freely and to talk a little bit about my thoughts on some of this stuff. And I think that aliens and the UFO phenomenon being extraterrestrial is highly highly likely, if not basically proven at this point. And so for me, it's not all reverse engineer. It's not all man-made technology. And I think Ashton would even say it's reverse engineered, but that was one of the comments that I got from a lot of people. A, we want to hear what you think, and B, you know, what do you think about is this alien technology? Is this man-made technology? So I just want to address that I think that a lot of what we see out there is either reverse engineered from crashes that have happened, extraterrestrial crashes that have happened, or interdimensional crashes that have happened, or it's alien or extraterrestrial in the first place. And I think if I think that the people who don't realize that are the people who have done no research into the topic and who haven't followed the topic and really understood the topic for any period of time. And the people who do think that there is some extraterrestrial or interdimensional kind of an explanation for a lot of what we see are really the people who study the phenomenon very, very deeply and who really go into the details and try to understand everything that there is to know about it. So, but back to Ashton, great guy, great conversation. I felt like on the Danny Jones podcast that he did there, and I wasn't ever able to find the other one with Dory, but you know, it was tough to watch the Danny Jones for me because I'm good friends with Danny, and it was cool to become friends with and get to know Ashton. But I felt like, candidly, Ashton was a little bit ambushed at the end of the Danny Jones podcast. Like he didn't know that was coming. You know, Danny kind of had that in the back pocket for the end of the episode, and I don't think that it's conclusive either. Like okay, sure, the footage has a chance of being fake. Like maybe even the footage is probably fake. You know, both of those two things might be fair to say. I don't know. It's just a percentage chance thing, but I don't think that it was conclusive that the lines on the blob didn't line up exactly. Ashton was right. They weren't an exact match, and that was just some random thing from some video game that some guy found that looked like a similar thing to the UFO video, but I don't think it was conclusive enough to completely dismiss the possibility that the videos could be real. Are the videos real? I don't know, man. Probably not, right? I mean, probably not, but they could be. And so to hear his story and to hear his theory, again, is I think one of those things where it's like if we don't explore these possibilities, we're really missing out on, we're really just limiting ourselves through our beliefs of, hey, this is fake. That's a belief. This is fake, because we really don't know 100%. So we're really just limiting ourselves. And so giving him that opportunity to get out and talk after not really. And I love Danny. He's a good friend. He's a good dude, and much respect. And go subscribe to Danny Jones' podcast right now. Awesome guy, and good person. Great wife. Super cool family. But in that particular episode, I just feel like Ashton was probably not really given a fully fair opportunity to really talk about his research.
Yeah. I told you very early on, you asked my opinion. So Ryan, do you think these videos are real or fake? And I subscribe to the same thought process that you do, that I'm never going to go 100 or 0. I think that they have a high percentage chance of being true. But what I said to you, and this applies to a lot of things, just because a video, a situation looks like it was created via CGI doesn't mean that it was, right? You can take so many situations today and recreate them with CGI. That doesn't mean that they're fake. Just because you can recreate it doesn't diminish what actually occurred. And then the other piece of it is number one, the videos are fake. The videos are fake. Then number two, how could our military do that to civilians? Have you not paid attention to government experiments going back as long as our country's been around? The Tuskegee.
The government's been killing civilians
exactly.
since the beginning of government.
The Tuskegee. What is the name of the island where Lyme disease started? Same thing. Like, we have no qualms about experimenting on our own people.
Lyme disease, by the way. Fuck the government.
Yeah, I wasn't going to bring that up before you did, but like we pretend in that situation like, oh, our government would never do that. Look at what they'll do to our own citizens. Look what they'll do to people who aren't citizens. Like, so I firmly believe, looking at those two things, there's a high probability that occurred due to the videos. And then I know firsthand what the government's capable of and what they are comfortable doing.
Yeah. Well, it's weird. Planes don't disappear.
No, absolutely not.
Planes, you don't lose track of a plane. It doesn't matter if it flew into the South Indian Ocean. Like, we have satellites, we have tracking devices, we have the black box, we have ways to ping the plane.
Yep.
Like, the planes don't disappear, period. So it's a very strange situation, and so it's for sure worth exploring and being open-minded.
They've kicked off that search again. I read something this morning, and I'll have to put the article up there, but they're back in searching for it again.
Yeah. The government probably dumped an old 747 out there in the the ocean, and hey, we found it. Can't believe it.
We found it, guys. It was right here the whole time.
Right.
We didn't even. It actually landed. We didn't know that. We lost some serial numbers. My bad.
Yeah.
Our bad.
Yeah. There's no bodies. Don't worry about that. The fish must have got them or something. Yes. So yeah, I mean, Ryan Bledsoe was a wild episode and experience out at the property in Parrish. So I mean, we kind of talked a little bit about that on the episode and what we saw at Parrish. But what are your thoughts?
I walked into it. I'm not going to say with a healthy amount of skepticism, but always open to what could occur and what we could see. And we got out there to the property, and it was a beautiful night. It was cold. The sun went down obviously at its normal time, but we really started to see the stars and everything. And then, look, I won't go into all the detail. Go watch the episode to find all of it. But I personally saw something that was not a plane, that was not a satellite, that was, in my opinion, in that moment, and still now, was not a man-made object. Now, am I outright going to say, oh, I saw an orb?
So explain it. What did it do?
So
what did it look like? What did it do?
So we had been, watching for different things that evening, and we had seen things going in straight lines, which at the time, in my opinion, was a satellite.
Right.
But then we saw one I don't even know what you would call it. We experienced one event to where they were in a triangle formation, and we know that satellites don't do that.
That was weird.
That was weird.
That was weird.
And then if you look back at some of the other
They
events,
looked like satellites. Like they looked like stars moving in the sky, or like a satellite moving in the sky.
Triangle pattern.
But in a perfect triangle pattern, not moving 1 millimeter from the next and just coasting along the sky. And they weren't like blacking out the sky behind them. I don't think, but I don't remember that being the case. But it appeared that the space between them was sky. It wasn't like a craft or anything.
Yeah.
But it was like three little star-looking objects or satellite-looking objects moving through the sky, traveling at the exact same speed. And I immediately Googled, or asked AI, do satellites fly in pairs? Because I'd never seen that before.
Yeah.
And a pair is one thing, but three is very, very strange.
And in that close proximity, moving at that speed,
AI is it does not happen. It's it doesn't. You're not going to see that. So that was weird.
Well, and then when you start to look at some of the other events, like Chris, Bledsoe, and Ron, they've seen those triangles before. And then obviously during the episode, one of the big hallmarks of Chris's experience was the triangle. So that was the first thing that we saw that really got me. Okay, all right, this is different. And then about 30 minutes later, right directly overhead, I see a star moving, but it's not moving in a straight line. It's starting to zigzag, and not zigzag over long periods of time, but a very tight zigzag. And then it starts spiraling.
Spiraling?
Kind of like that, like a corkscrew. And I got goosebumps. Because there's this realization, I'm a science fiction nerd, you can tell by just spending 5 minutes with me, Matt knows this, that I love all things space, so I'm very familiar with it. I know what a satellite looks like. I know what a plane looks like. I also know how they move. There was, in that moment, I realized, that's not a satellite. Whatever that is, it's not man-made. And in that moment, you like I shared on the podcast and I shared that night, you get that fear, that realization of I'm looking at something that in my immediate opinion didn't come from this planet, didn't originate from this planet, sure as hell didn't originate by man. And you almost you have that that instant fear. And then it disappeared. And as soon as it disappeared, the best way that I could have described it was you get this longing, because once you get over that initial fear that I'm looking at something that's not from this planet, you want to see more of it. At least in my situation, you understand the opportunity of I'm seeing something that's not from this, that we didn't make, that's in space. So you miss it instantly, and you kind of get that longing. And yeah, it was
that's wild.
It's wild to me.
So
absolutely wild.
I didn't see that. So because I didn't look, because I was facing you, and I was facing you. It was directly overhead, but moving behind me. And then I figured it was going to be a satellite. I figured, okay, so I'm not even going to break my neck trying to turn around, because this thing's probably just a satellite. And so I didn't look, and then you started freaking out about it zigzagged, and then I then got up and turned around, and it took a few seconds to locate it and to see where it was. And by that time, it was basically it was there for a quick second, and then it disappeared.
Gone.
Yeah,
I couldn't find it anymore.
Yeah. So if I'm debunking, and then for Chris, the biggest things were at the horizon. I'm sorry, for Ryan. Bledsoe, the biggest things were at the horizon, the orbs that kept were they descending or were they rising?
They were ascending.
Ascending, yeah. So that was in the general direction of the airport. As I think back to the night and which direction that was and where we were looking, I think that's going to be the general direction of the Sarasota airport. So for me, It was a little bit weird, but I think you could explain that one as planes taking off. If we were to said descending, I couldn't remember if they were descending or ascending, but descending, planes could be landing, ascending, planes could be taking off. So that one for me I don't want to completely discount it because it was weird. There was some weird movements and things, and it seemed like one split into two, but was that one plane landing and one taking off? I think that was the general direction of the airport. And so that for me was the least interesting. And I should have realized that night, and I could have pointed it out to Ryan, and we could have talked about that and potentially pulled up a plane tracker or whatever to see what was happening over there. The one that where I call it mine, but we all saw the three traveling in a triangle, but that was the one that was most impactful for me. But that could be debunked as three satellites. I think, if again, it would be extraordinarily rare for them to be flying together. And then yours, if it could be debunked, then the only way that I could see debunking yours would be because we had a fire going. And so could the fire have, and I'm asking you because I didn't see it, you were sitting there, but could the fire have created heat in front of you and caused a distortion in your line of sight with whatever it was that you were looking at?
So it 100% could. But at the time, it didn't. And let me tell you why. So we looked at, I think it was Mars was one of the planets that was, the way we were sitting was off to my left, your right. But I kept looking at it and I was like, that's Mars. And I was watching it swirl, not the same swirl or zigzag pattern, but it was moving. It's like, well, that's weird. So I stepped, and then at the time, the way the fire and the smoke, or excuse me, the heat and the smoke were coming up was right across my line of sight. So I walked over to the other side and I looked up and it's like, it's no longer moving. I'm like, okay, I get that. But I remember vividly the way that I was looking, I was at such an angle to where the heat of the fire wasn't impacting it. Then the smoke was moving in a direction that was away from my line of sight. So totally understand. We've all seen fire kind of do crazy things with heat and stuff like that. But in that moment, in my best recollection, the fire, the heat, the smoke, all of that was not an impact. And I agree with you with some of the stuff that we saw at the horizon. There's a chance it could have been a plane. There's a chance it could have been an orb. I think, when we do this again in the future, we're going to bring a lot more technology with us to, in the moment, as best as we can, try to verify some of those things. And I think that's healthy to do.
Yeah.
But I walked away from it. I think everyone in the Bledsoe family has some sort of connection that I just, I can't currently explain. I think a whole lot of other people can't explain. And that's what makes them kind of so unique.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, cool. And then in terms of like future episodes and what's coming up next, we got some awesome guests coming up. So we haven't, I guess we'll, the episode that we just recorded with Timothy Alberino will be out by the time this comes out. This is next, right? After that?
Yep. Timothy's will be out the week of Christmas.
Cool.
And then obviously this will come out to ring in the new year.
Cool. And then we got Mike Collins from Wandering Wolf, who seems like a super cool dude. Looking forward to having him in town. Jeffrey Long, who is like a near-death experience expert. And I mentioned this to you a few months back, but start up a series called Experiencer Series, where we talk to people who have had either UFO experiences or near-death experiences or experiences with whatever it might be, whatever it might be. That would be awesome. And so I think Jeffrey will be a good person to get to know and potentially be able to connect with some people with some really incredible experiences that they've had. So that's awesome. Looking forward to that one. We got Chris Bledsoe. After that, we're going to have better equipment for that skywatching event. So you want to mention that? Yeah.
So we've purchased, when we did Ryan Bledsoe's episode, we had iPhones. That's it. So we actually got a lot of great feedback on X from people about, hey, if you're going to do it, this is what we recommend the equipment to be. So we've got a telescope. We are going to have a low light, and I forget the model number right now, but Canon DSLR camera that we're going to be able to hook up to it and record. And then we're going to have some technology, Flight Tracker 24, which is an amazing app in which, in real time, you can check out flights and things like that. And then we're also going to have something similar to called Night Sky, where it's a point and shoot. So if you see something in the night sky or even during the day, you can hold your phone up to it, and through virtual reality VR in the phone, it'll tell you that's satellite. Here's the type of satellite it is. So it'll give us again. We're not getting this equipment to go out there and say you're wrong or this isn't real. We're doing it as we should. We're trying to say, hey, it's this, it's that. We sure as hell don't know what that is. And all of our technology, we aren't able to say what it is. And I think that's important to have that.
No doubt. No doubt. Yeah, we got Nick Pope after that, who's a UFO expert from the UK. I'm excited to talk to. He's always on the Ancient Aliens and all those shows.
I'm so excited that we're getting into the UFO sphere.
Me too.
And I've been very transparent with you, and I think other people. I appreciate ancient history, whether it's Mesoamerica or ancient Egypt, but my fascination on a personal level has always been at the stars and UFOs and UAPs. So Timothy up next week. Nick Pope.
I don't know if I could pick a favorite between the two. Honestly, I love ancient civs.
I don't think it's picking a favorite per se, but it's like that's like if you ask me, hey Ryan, what do you want to talk about?
Yeah.
You know what I'm going to say.
Sci-fi.
Exactly. And I think your first thing is going to be, I'm going to talk ancient civ.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you dislike or like one or the other more. It's just, it's also a knowledge level too. I think you're very have a very deep knowledge when it comes to ancient civilizations, Egypt and all. Like you can rattle off dates. Like I cannot believe, where
I just make shit up. I was just playing. Keep going, man. Keep going. You're on one.
I was not expecting that. Where I can more so, when it comes to space and space travel and UFOs and stuff like that, like I am neck deep into it. So Timothy Alberino, hopefully all of you have seen this episode by now.
So you started editing that.
I did. No, I was actually doing it right before we recorded this episode. Holy shit, that's going to be fun.
Yeah,
that's face peelers.
Yeah,
and just go on from there. But also a very nice individual, very cool guy. And Nick Pope will be great within that too.
We got Andrew Collins, who's ancient civilization person who's flying in as well from overseas. We got John Stewart, who has a video with a possible interrogation of a gray alien that he is absolutely convinced is real. So we'll dive into that video. And then we got Danny Hillman coming on, who is he wrote that paper about Gunung Padang, about potentially being like 28,000 plus years old. So he's the guy who wrote the paper on that, who's been, Dibble tried to immediately discard it and debunk it and all this stuff, and so it never really got attention at first, and then it got people angry at it once they started to understand what he was implying about that site. So I'm looking forward to bringing him in.
He's gonna be a lot of fun too. Gonna be a lot of fun,
no doubt. So yeah, that's kind of it, man. I in terms of the Peru trip, I just want to comment on that amazing trip down to Peru a couple of weeks ago. And I'm hoping that we can figure out a way to put some of that content into episode form and to be able to put out an episode maybe in January or February or something like that. I thought I would be able to get to it sooner, but both of us have just been slammed with getting back to work and holiday season and episodes and whatnot. So I put a bunch of it out on X, and people have loved the little short videos, but I think having a full episode potentially could be really, really cool as well. And I mean, the big thing that stuck out to me from Peru was all of that red stuff that's caked on all these stones that are puffed out in the front and perfectly cut to maybe cut, maybe not cut, maybe just placed and maybe they were softened and they just kind of dried into place. I'm interested in that red stuff and finding out what that is, because I think it had to do with potentially, I think it had to do with softening the stones in order to get them to be able to fit perfectly with no seams and to I think it could explain how these things were made, and it could be really good evidence for an ancient civilization because you see it on on Easter Island, and you see it in parts of Egypt, and you see it in Peru and South America. You see it in of course, um, all throughout the Sacred Valley and in Cusco. And so um, I think there's something there. And the big reason I think that there's something there is because when you see two stones on top of each other and you've got an earthquake and one slides back and the stone below is exposed, or when you've had an earthquake and two stones separate, where they had been connected is always perfectly smooth. And most of the time there's this red substance that's in there. And the explanation for how those stones got to be the shape that they are is just hammers that people were hammering on them. And you can see the hammer marks on the front of a lot of them, where like there's these little indentations all over them, and where they've flattened out the ones that have puffed out. You can see indentations on the flatness of them, but there's no indentations where they've sat on top of each other for hundreds and potentially thousands of years, which means that they must have gone in and not only hammered every one of these things to perfect precision and to perfect shape, but it means they polished them as well after they hammered them. But they didn't polish the front, the part that's exposed to people, the site that people
everyone sees
would actually see. It makes no sense why the inside would be totally smooth unless they dried onto each other like that. And like the weight of them is potentially what caused them to puff out. And it would explain how you could create millions and millions of these perfectly shaped blocks that just have no imperfections on them in the seams out of some of the hardest stones on the planet. So
wild.
It's wild. It's absolutely wild. And I really think that there's something there, and really think that this red substance needs to be studied. I even had NEXT jump into some of my ex comments and be like, I agree with you, dude. And he's more of like, he identifies more with the
mainstream
side of things typically. So, and people, that's becoming a derogatory term, I think, now. So hopefully no offense is taken when I say mainstream, but Flint hates it when you call him mainstream. But, anyway, we won't go down that rabbit hole. But so that's interesting. I think in terms of what's next for 2025, I've got the Cosmic Summit coming up. So I'm going to be speaking at the Cosmic Summit, which will be pretty cool. I'll be able to give a presentation on the vases. I'm working with a scientist down here in Florida, Maximus. He's a Russian guy, and I can't get him off of the vase topic. Like he is like pushing me for more scans and more files and give me more vases. And he purchased an SEM.
He got it.
Yeah, he got.
Oh, hell yeah!
Scanning electron microscope. So he'll be looking at detail in the at a very low level of high level of accuracy. The tool marks inside the vases to try to figure out what tools were used to carve these things. And he's going to have 80 of them to look at. So we're going to learn a lot.
Yeah.
And we're going to learn a lot about
the first one he looked at, correct me if I'm wrong, but he was like, that shouldn't be there. That doesn't make sense.
Titanium.
Yeah. I can't explain why that is.
Right.
And he was kind enough to share the initial scan from it. And I remember looking at it and I'm like, I don't know what any of that means, but he's excited. So I'm excited.
Yeah.
But to your point, he just examining them just by hand. And he was like, this doesn't make sense.
Right.
But I think it's going to be a big step forward in terms of these vases is getting it down to that granular molecular level. But the other thing I like what he's going to do, and he was very upfront about this, is he's like, we are going to document this where the end goal is a scientific paper.
Yeah.
Not just, we're going to make some YouTube videos.
Right.
That's a byproduct.
He's going to come on the show for sure. And we're going to talk about his work, but
his end goal is to scientifically publish a paper.
Right.
And that's, again, I think that's one of the things we all need to strive for, where you have this alternative history kind of background, and he's or alternative science history, whatever you want to call it. And he's a little bit more mainstream. I mean, he's PhD and all of that. But I think that's an example of how people can come together and get answers.
Right, for sure.
Because that's all that we want.
Yeah. So I'm continuing the work on the vases. That's important. That's one big thing that's happening in 2025. I've launched a website called ancientstonevases.com where we can buy vases. We've started just with the thin wall, but in the next couple weeks, maybe even by the time this episode comes out, we'll have additional vases on the website.
Yep.
I hope to one day be able to put all of them up there and allow people to buy them. They come with a certificate of authenticity that's signed by me that says that this is a limited edition print of the first edition. There's going to be 2,000 of each of them in the first edition, and so I'll sign the documents that say this is an exact replica copy of the original. So that's pretty cool. We've also got our Limitless cups that are going to be for sale on the channel on YouTube. So you go onto the YouTube channel and be able to get these and the vases. So you don't have to go to Ancient Stone Vases to buy them. You can just go to Matt Beall Limitless YouTube channel to buy this.
Yep, and in our store, and they'll be, you'll see them as you're watching right now. You're going to see them pop up, and we're exploring. Like Matt said, we're going to do the vases. We're obviously we're doing the cups. You know, here hopefully in the very near future, we're going to start expanding into apparel and other things like that. So
cool.
That's kind of the hope for that.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
I think we leave it on that. And I'll say this to you, being on the production side of it, Matt, I've had a hell of a year. I look back in what we've done, and I think you as an interviewer and being in here talking to these guests, you've grown. I mean, I have seen the progress and stuff like that. And then even, from a production level, I think we've grown. And somebody that's not on screen that we talk about a lot is Joe. Even the way that she's communicating and getting everything scheduled behind the scenes, it's when I look back of where we were a year ago and where we are now, it gives me so much excitement about where we're going to be in a year and a year after that. So
no doubt. Yeah.
It's been a hell of a lot of fun.
It has been. Yep. Well said. Totally agree. It's been fun,
good.
Man. Good stuff. We'll close it up.
Well, that's a wrap.
All right. Good times, man. Well done.